Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Wood, I love your image.
Holdover from when my kids were little.
Yes, love them.
And then you try and then
Yeah, so I'll get on and do my public comment when I'm done.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is Monday, December 7th, 2020. I would like to call to order the regular board meeting of the Othello School District Board of Directors. We want to welcome all our guests who are on the either Zoom call tonight or watching this via YouTube. Thank you for being with us. Our customary disclosure of hopefully we evade technical difficulties. Nonetheless, want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Having said that, I'd like to also at this time excuse board member Lindsay Prowse, who will not be with us tonight. She asked that I excuse her from this meeting. I will entertain a motion for the approval of tonight's agenda.
I will make that motion.
Okay, there's been a motion made by Director Johnson to approve tonight's agenda. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been seconded by Director Stevenson. All in favor of the approval of tonight's agenda, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Do we know what Sharon's vote was?
I
It
am.
was,
Okay.
Sorry.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Talia, is there public comment tonight?
Yes, we have John Erickson.
Okay, Mr. John Erickson, I don't need to go through all our particulars of public comment. We've had a previous discussion, and the floor is yours, sir, to give us your public comment tonight.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
All right. I didn't know if I hit the unmute button. My name's John Erickson. I live here in the city of Othello. I'm also a city councilman for the city of Othello. I wanted to disclose the discussion I'm gonna have tonight is that of my personal self. It's John Erickson and not any views on behalf of the city. Having said that, I'm just gonna come out with the Big Bang Shock theory. I propose to shut Othello School District down for 5 weeks. And I'm gonna explain, so before anybody hangs up and starts cussing me on Facebook, I'd like to explain that 5 weeks would start at the end of next week. We would then proceed into the 2 weeks of Christmas break and extend 3 additional weeks. Those 3 additional weeks would be made up in the summer months. We can call them snow days or anything like that. Reasoning behind this proposal. I'm sure I'm being called crazy right now, but there is a little bit of thought, a lot of thought. By shutting down the schools, we can help to combat the spread of COVID-19. The school teachers and staff would be free to go home and stay safe, stay healthy. This has been a concern brought up multiple times by school staff and echoed in board meetings. Other reasons for the shutdown for 5 weeks would also be to kind of overcome, any current cases, and we're seeing a great. I think we're in excess of 1,000. Don't quote me on the number of cases per 100,000 in the school district. We're considerably less than that in the county, but those numbers may be a little different as of today, but not much. The downside to that is on the school closure for staff and teachers would be, making the snow days up, or we'll call them COVID days, for purposes of discussion. I'd also like to suspend all online classes, all distance learning for those additional three weeks. And that right now, after speaking with the state superintendent, Chris Reichdahl, and receiving an email from him, which I've shared with Mr. Garza to share with the board, he's in agreement that online school isn't adequate. And my biggest fear is if we continue with school to the end of the year, we're going to be graduating students to the next grade level with probably not the full and adequate education of the previous. And if we're able and successful to shut the school down for 5 weeks, and we can start to lower the spread of COVID-19 amongst staff, thus depleting resources to an already taxed resource for substitute teachers, and just having teachers on staff as well as support staff, which would then contribute to a lack of safety in our schools or even equitable education. If we can get on board with that, deplete these numbers, then we could fall within reasonable metrics and return to school in an in-person situation. What that looks like, I'll leave that up to the capable hands of the board of directors and the administrative staff. But that is my proposal for that. If we're unsuccessful in becoming part of the lower, and we see cases continue to rise or stay at the same level, we win again, because we then because we've been out those 5 weeks, we then know that the spread of COVID isn't happening within the schools. It's a pretty clear indicator. And so we can still come back to school, because obviously school is a little bit safer. So once again, that's operations. And for anybody that's listening, I'm really trying to bullet point probably a 45-minute conversation that I could have on this. The biggest thing that let me go to a different page here. The biggest thing I'd like to bullet point and highlight is this isn't an off the cuff. I've discussed this with leaders within our school executive team and our school board's members at great length, sometimes maybe even a little long-winded. I know that there's going to be challenges such as the SEL. I wish I had a complete and accurate answer on how we can overcome those challenges. I've spitballed ideas with the school superintendent, an idea, I shouldn't make that plural, that, some kind of Zoom, offering some kind of Zoom for interaction amongst our students. But I know that's presented with its challenges, and the IT person is probably sitting back thinking, you're silly, we can't do that. So apologize if I put you on the spot. But so I would also leave the SEL requirements, which I acknowledge fully are a huge challenge in a proposal like this. One big thing we have to realize when talking about this proposal is the equity. The Othello School District has done a phenomenal job at attempting to achieve the equity in providing education to the students. But one major piece of the equity, and I don't know if it's been thought of, I'm sure it has, but if it hasn't, I'd like other people to know. The biggest piece in equity in my mind is, and I'll use fake names, little Sally in 7th grade helping her 2 younger siblings in lower grade levels, as most older siblings do. They lend a hand with their younger siblings. But little Sally in the higher education, where there's a little bit more requirement, a little bit more grading strategy, she's suffering. And so we want to provide that equity to where little Sally can get that education uninterrupted, as well as their younger siblings. It's well known that most families are dual income families, and the ability to oversee and monitor the entire education of our children while we're bringing an income home to keep a roof over our heads and bellies full is a real challenge. And I think this is a challenge met by a large part of the community, as well as individuals in the executive and the board of directors.
Hey,
So-
Sean, like I
Yeah.
said in our conversation, we're almost over double the time allotted.
I'll close it up now.
Okay.
So I'd like the board of directors to consider this strongly. I'd like to offer a one-on-one phone call with them. You guys have my number. If you don't, Mr. Garza, Chris Hurstu, or Dr. Chris Hurstu, and I can go into a deeper comment. I appreciate your time. I'd like you guys to consider this for further discussion. It's not a decision we have to have tonight because we have time, but it is a decision we need to make, I believe, before entering into Christmas break so that people can make accommodations. So once again, thanks, board of directors and everybody listening.
All right. Thank you, John. All right. Dr. Hurst, don't know if you've got anything you'd like to comment.
Absolutely. I had the opportunity to meet with Councilmember Erickson and to listen to his plan in detail. And I was very upfront with him as he was with me as well. And sharing his plan, I did share some concerns with the plan I certainly would like to share with the board. So as you're thinking about his proposed plan, here's some of the concerns that I have. One, with any new proposal, there's always additional conversations that need to happen. So off the top of my head, one of the conversations that come to the forefront is, one, if we're talking about postponing a delay in 5 weeks and also postponing Zoom sessions or online sessions, which means all learning, one, we would have to consider a delay in graduation. We would have to have conversations also about summer plans, changing summer plans. So we know that happens way in advance with a lot of our staff here in OSD. We have to have conversations also about adding time to the school year calendar. That opens up a whole entirely different conversation. When we talk about the calendar, we're talking about sitting down at the table with negotiations units and just having that conversation about a change in work conditions and bargaining the impact of those decisions as well. The other piece that I had shared with Councilmember Erickson, I certainly had a concern about is no learning happening during this time. So as I think about 5 weeks of no learning to include online learning, it will be equivalent to the summer slide, which we've talked about. So imagine the experience that our students have whenever they are out of school for the summer, and we're talking about the equivalent of learning loss during that time. Also, Councilmember Erickson did mention that the district could look at touching bases with students so they could still look at the social and emotional needs of the students, but that's an issue within itself that would have to be discussed and bargained, because if teachers are out and they're not teaching, but we're having teachers really contact students, that's a whole nother issue that has to be discussed and bargained with at the table. So again, another concern would be no contact with students and meeting their social emotional needs during that 5-week period. My other question that I just asked the board to think about is the board just last session or last week met and agreed to a metric. And my question would be, what would be the difference in entertaining this proposal? The board, in fact, has agreed upon a metric, which in fact causes us to pause, but also still allows us to come back and revisit, which Director Ken Johnson mentioned. Will there be an opportunity to revisit that in January? So those are the concerns. There was also a conversation that I shared with Councilmember Erickson about student learning. And I know that there was a comment, and I don't want to get it wrong, Councilmember Erickson, but I think you alluded to the fact about Zoom and whether it's effective or not. And I just think that we need to be very careful when we talk about online sessions being effective or ineffective. I've not presented any data to the board, nor have we presented any data to the public to share anything otherwise ineffective. So, in my opinion, online learning is effective. Are there some issues and some problems? Yes. But right now, there's no data that's been presented for us to draw any conclusions that it is ineffective. So I just think we just need to be very careful with that terminology. So again, those are the concerns that the board really has to consider as we even contemplate whether we're going to take on this additional proposal.
I'd like to give any board members an opportunity if they have any comment at this time. Okay, we will at a later time get together and have a conversation and address the proposal. Moving on to item B2. At the first meeting in December, it is election time. We will be electing a president, vice president, a legislative rep, a president pro temp, and a WIAA representative. These are one-year terms. I believe the ledge rep might be 2 years, yes. And do we wait till June to do that, Jen, or does that happen tonight?
Typically, the ledge rep has been 2 years and at this same meeting, but we did it in June this time. And so I don't think that we should do the legislative rep, but I think that we could do the student rep mentor if we decide to.
Okay.
Has been an elected position, I think, in the past, but I think it's been appointed and then it never really got I don't know.
Yeah. So with that, I will take any nominations for president of the school board.
Mike, are you up for it for another year?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll nominate Mike as for president.
Is there a second to the nomination? Okay, I'll remind folks that nominations do not need to be seconded. Is there any other nominations for president? Okay, we will now hold a roll call. All those in favor of Mike Garza continuing to be the president for one more year, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. I will now entertain a motion for the vice president of the board. I would like to nominate Jen Stevenson if she is up to the position.
I accept that nomination.
Is there a second?
You did just say we don't need to have a second.
Not necessary, but a second would
Oh, I see.
also indicate a preference. Any other nominations for vice president? All those in favor of Jen Stevenson being vice president, aye? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Sharon, did I get an answer or were you an abstention? Ken, I think I saw an aye. Okay. We have election of a vice president, Director Stevenson. Director Stevenson has served as legislative rep. We will perhaps at the next meeting tackle an election for the legislative rep. I will now entertain a motion for the election of President Pro Temp, and I would like to nominate Ken Johnson as President Pro Temp if he is up.
Well, I was just thinking we should do Lindsay. She's not here tonight, so.
And she won't be here at the next meeting either. Are we in agreement that we can postpone it till the 5 of us are there? Would that be a possibility?
I'm fine with that.
Yep.
Are you declining the nomination then, Ken?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Any other nominations for Vice President or President Pro Temp? Okay, we will table that election till all 5 board members are at a meeting. The WIA representative also is Director Prowse. Any nominations for the WIA rep?
Ken,
Should
is
we
that,
just wait for that one till the next meeting then also? Till we can talk?
Yeah, we can do that.
that's fine.
We will table the legislative rep election and the WIA representative to the first meeting where all 5 of us are present.
And the President Pro Tem.
I thought that's, yes. Okay. Jen, then we will also at that meeting do the student rep mentor.
Okay.
Maybe have some discussions and figure out exactly what we want to do with that position as well.
Perfect.
All right. Okay, thank you very much for that. I'd like to thank you all and assert my commitment to this board and the running of it and the attention to detail that it merits. And thank you very much for the confidence placed in myself. Moving on to item B3.
Before we go to those, can I mean, it's kind of part of board member discussions, but also part of elections.
Okay.
I have proposals that I would like us to talk as a board about, whether we need to wait until Lindsay or not. After I make each one, we could decide. I think that we need to do PD for the board as a board. I think I would like to propose that we do this 3 times a year. And I have some suggestions for the first 2. I think that at our board retreat, we could come up with a plan for the 3 for the upcoming year. That's typically in April or May when we have our board retreat.
May.
I propose for the first one is we talk about, and WASDA can do these, many of these. The roles and responsibilities of a board member is what I would suggest is the first one. It's always great to review. Definitely needs to be a public meeting. It would be separate from a regular meeting. I would like to propose the second one is policy governance. We can just have someone that's a policy governance expert or that even the creator possibly come and speak with us about what is the difference between policy governance. And then since we had done one right before about the responsibilities of a board member, and then the new 5 of us, I feel like so many things that we talk about and that we move forward with are the old 5's plan. And I like the old 5's plan, but we're a very new 5 and we need to come up with our own plans. And after we do policy governance, then we decide, are we going to keep it? I like policy governance. I would like to keep it, but we need to make that decision. And that we do both of those before we do our retreat. So that's number 1, our own trainings. Number two, that we do 2 retreats a year. We do the typical one that we've always done in the late spring with just the board and the superintendent, where we do the superintendent's evaluation, but that we also do one other retreat every year. It's all about relationships and whoever we need to, or whichever group we might need to build a better relationship with, or do some in-depth work on some new angle or something that we want to work on. So we've been discussing and trying to work through getting one with all of the admin. I know we're still working on that. So that would be, in this case of this coming 2021, those would be our 2 for the year. Maybe we need to do it with OEA. Maybe we need to go through all of our policies with an equity lens. Maybe we need to, there's so many different things that it could be. Then, so that's the second major proposal. The third is, I think that we need to have what, I was talking to some other board members at the annual meeting, WASDA's meeting, and they do 2-on-1 monthly is what they call them, where there's 2 board members with the superintendent. And of course, because there's 5 of us, sometimes it would be 1-on-1. If we rotate around, it would build our relationships individually with the superintendent and with each other. It would give us like a check-in where we would have a great opportunity to ask all kinds of questions and just make sure we get clarification, share things or whatever. I think many of us actually do these, but they're not official. And so if we just said sometime in that first week of every month, and I've talked to Dr. Hurst about that idea, early morning, in the evening, meet for lunch, all kinds of different ideas. I mean, we could make them short, long, depending upon someone's schedule. He's willing to meet that. So those are my proposed modifications. Want to hear your thoughts?
No, one can never stop learning is what I would say to your first proposal on the PD there. I think those are doable things, although those are necessary. I think WASDA supplies those trainings, if I'm not mistaken, free of cost on most of those exercises or seminars or whatever those are called. The 2-on-1 or eventual 1-on-1, I think is a great idea as well. That'll give us, as individual board members, an opportunity to fine-tune, I guess, our relationship with the superintendent, an opportunity to dialogue. Sometimes it's a great opportunity to straight from the horse's mouth, no pun intended. So no, I agree with those things. I think those are things that we should definitely put into some sort of agenda, some sort of a calendar somewhere. Okay.
Any other thoughts on those proposals? I know it means a lot more time for us.
Definitely a lot more time. Definitely more personal development and stuff would be great. It'd be nice if we could do it more in person than over a Zoom, hopefully in the future. I think we get a lot more out of it, and it's a lot nicer when it's a little more personal, one-on-one that way too. So hopefully here in the near future, we could do that a little more.
Agreed. Okay, moving on to item B3, board member discussion. Is there a legislative response or report?
Yes, there is. So I was able to reach all 3 of our representatives at the state level and get a date and a time for us to meet with them. And it is December 14th, a week from today at, oh shoot, now I gotta check. I think it's at 2 o'clock.
2 to 4, I think you.
Let me look. 2 o'clock, it's gonna be by Zoom, and those members of the board that can attend with our legislators, we only have 30 minutes. So I think that we will need to meet beforehand and make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. We know what we're doing. So maybe if we met, and so we're only meeting by Zoom, if we met at like 1:30, for those that are able to meet, depending upon who is able, we might need to make it an open public meeting. And if there's only 2 of us, then it will not be an open public meeting.
I would definitely like to be there.
Okay. It sounded like Ken, does that work for you? Okay. Sharon, is that a time that you're?
I think I can do that day.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like we're going to definitely have a quorum. Ken, was there anything else you wanted to? I mean, I know that you had texted that you were able to and willing.
No, that works good for me.
Okay. So definitely a quorum. So we will need to announce that. If we, I'm not quite sure how we're going to make that work when we do a pre-Zoom to discuss our things, and then we would go into a Zoom with them. Can we have?
It's going to have to be a public meeting. If there's more than 3 of us board members on that Zoom meeting, it has to be a public meeting.
Right, but what I'm saying is then we release their link also, but it's just the board and them. I mean, there's no public comment. It's just the board and them having conversations, but the pre-meeting is going to be a different Zoom link than the meeting with them.
Yes, that would work.
I think we'll get the details ironed out to where we have a Zoom amongst us. It is announced as a public meeting. We'll have our discussion, and maybe we'll have it finished 5 minutes before the time with the representatives, and that'll give us time to join their link as well.
Right. Whether we call it a workshop or a special meeting, one of those details. Okay. So that was the legislative part. Let's see, was there anything else?
If I could just,
Yes, please.
if I could just say something, what I'll do is when I send out OPMA, I'll send out both meeting IDs and passwords for each of the Zoom links and make it very clear in the OPMA that there will be a pre-meeting for all of you to discuss your topics, and then the meeting with the other people. So.
Right. Perfect. Okay. So that's part of the legislative report. The next part is we had decided one of my kids asked me today how many meetings I've had for school board this week. And between last Monday to this Monday, I've had 5. Some of those were personal one-on-ones with Dr. Hurst or other things like that. And that doesn't count all the phone calls and the texts and emails. And so because of that, I know that we had canceled our joint city council meeting that was supposed to be on the 9th. And so in the conversation with the mayor over that, he came up with some possible dates that I wanted us to look at. And hopefully we won't have 700 meetings that week either. January 12th, January 14th, or January 19th. All of those would be at 6:30. They would be at 6:30 for those. So they're Tuesdays and Thursdays. What's best for you guys?
I would say Thursday the 14th for myself, but I will make myself available if possible to any date that accommodates the rest of us.
Tuesday the 19th is not good for me. So the 14th would be fine. Ken and Sharon?
The 14th would be my first choice if I had to have one there.
My calendar's in the other room, so I think it's okay.
Okay. All right, I will plan on the 14th. And then we'll discuss we're hosting it this time. The school board is hosting it. So I will be, we need to discuss the details, but they had like a rough agenda. If I can figure out where I put that at. So the draft agenda that he sent was introductions and comments, school board update and outlook for school year, sports, extracurricular, new facilities, etc. Then we have the city update and then topics of joint discussion. So we could always populate that or not. We might just be taking up so much time just with the first two, then closing and adjourn. So I will forward that to Dr. Hurst, Mike, and Talia. And then we can populate that and figure out the specifics there. But any other thoughts? Things you need to
get that to us, and we'll throw more discussion around it. We got a little over a month. But no, I appreciate the effort and the collaboration there with the city, Jen. Thank you very much for that, for being the in between there. Bullet point number 2, our self-assessment. We are all guilty of not responding at the last meeting.
I did.
Okay.
Just after I saw that there was no responses, I did.
All right. Let us keep in check and assess our own meetings like we've committed to doing. All right. Student representative reports. Are either of our reps on the meeting tonight?
I'm here, but I don't have anything to share tonight.
Okay. Was that Elise?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate you showing interest and listening to our discussion. Thank you very much for that. Lauren, are you on by chance?
Yeah, I'm here too. I don't have anything to present either, though.
Thank you as well. Appreciate you being on the call tonight. Moving on to item C1, I will entertain a motion to approve required approvals tonight.
I have a quick question before we get to the approvals. Under accounts payable, there is one called Mark I Manufacturing for $23,000. I just wanted to know the.
Mark
I don't think we've had one from there.
Right. They're a supplier of COVID-19 hygiene products. And so that is a mass order district-wide for hand sanitizer. And it's a large order that will last for quite a while.
Okay.
I actually did a little price lookup check, and it was a great buy for the district for the products that were bought.
Great. Thank you for checking into those details. I would like to move that we approve the required approvals.
Okay, motion has been made by Director Stevenson to approve required approvals. Can I get a second, please?
I will second that.
Okay, seconded by Director Johnson. All in favor of approving required approvals, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Hand wave, Sharon. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item C2. I'll entertain a motion to approve December early accounts payable warrants 2.
I'll make a motion to pay
Sharon.
the December
Thank you.
2020
Approve
early
that.
accounts payable.
Very good. There's been a motion made by Director Schutte to approve early accounts payable warrants 2. Can I get a second?
I second that.
All right. All in favor of approving December 2020 early accounts payable warrants to aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain from this vote.
Motion carries 3-0 with 1 abstention. Thank you for that. Pre-approved presentations to the board from the superintendent.
Yes, we have a presentation. We're going to turn it over to Pete and the teaching and learning team and our principals.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hurst. It's nice to be with you all tonight talking about teaching and learning as opposed to many of the other conversations we've had over the last several months related to health and safety. So excited to talk about secondary grading scale and a positive impact on student learning. Just as a quick reminder for the board, this is an operational item. There's certainly not a need for any action. We wanted to make you aware of some exciting work that's happening across the district. Particularly excited about the collaboration between our 3 secondary schools. We're working really hard to support those folks as they develop their own identity as building principals, but also that the schools become, we have the supports and the services in place that allow them to work together coherently. And this is an exciting step in that direction. Our building principals and their leadership teams at the sites have worked really hard to share with you tonight a concept around student grading that's focused on demonstrating evidence of learning, which is what we're particularly excited about. So I'll turn it over to our building folks.
All right, next slide, please. Why the change? COVID-19 continues to shine a spotlight on the trials and tribulations that have always existed in our academic community and has illuminated the urgent need for us as educators to strive for greater equity and fairness for our student body, as well as the need to give students who are struggling a clear pathway to success, a greater sense of hope, and help foster the belief that they, as young people, are not destined to be defined by the sum of their past failures, but that they are members of a school community of learners who believes in them and will meet them where they are at, wherever that is, and help guide them towards success. We building administrators at McFarland Middle School, Desert Oasis High School, and Othello High School listened to parents and students during fall conferences and noted their concerns. We held listening sessions at school action team and staff meetings to gather teacher input, and we reviewed the research literature and examined best practices. Over the next few slides, we will outline the new grading policy for grades 7 through 12 across all 3 secondary schools and explain how and why the policy focuses on measuring student learning, maintains grade standardization across all the secondary schools, creates a statistically fair system, and offers hope and encourages re-engagement. Next slide, please. Oops, I think we're... Grades should be a measure of student learning, not student compliance. Grades are not a reward. Grades are not a punishment. Grades, when used appropriately, are simply a valuable indicator of the learning that a student has gained in a class and the subject knowledge the student possesses. In fact, grades are most useful when teachers use them to determine if a student has mastered a subject or when the student needs more help and support in learning the concepts or standards.
So good evening. Another piece of this is just around creating a standard set of policies across our district. We want something that both students and parents can rely on. Currently, students experience vastly different expectations from teachers every year, and that can make it hard to know what teachers in each class, what they're going to do with late work and retakes and extra credit. Many students in our district or many teachers in our district are already adjusting their grade scales similar to this new policy, but that isn't reliable from a student's point of view. And this policy is going to create a predictable set of expectations for students across our district.
Hey, good evening, board, and thank you for this opportunity. Specifically around what is statistically fair and eliminating outliers. Statistically fair really is the key phrase that we're emphasizing here. The power of 0 on a 100-point scale is a detriment to grading, and we're emphasizing this need for change. We need to do what is fair, and fair means equal increments between grades. So in our traditional 100-point grading system, we have equal increments of 10 points between an A, B, C, and D, but the interval between D and F is 60 points, and that's not fair. I know arguments can be made that points or credit shouldn't be awarded for students who don't do the work, and I agree with that. In life, it's not fair to get a paycheck for not doing the work, and I think it's safe to say that we can all agree with that. What we're presenting here, though, is to do what is fair in equal increments across the board. So whether it's a 50 to 100-point scale instead, or a 4-3-2-1-0 system, the principle is the same. And so our colleagues will be presenting more detailed examples to present for further explanation of the traditional grading versus the new grading system.
Another point on our last bullet here is giving kids a chance to catch up. We gave an example of students who may have had a rough start this school year because of social emotional learning or one of many different reasons that exist, including technology difficulties, may never have a chance to catch up in the second quarter, even if they perform at a very high level. Again, if they had a rough start at the beginning of the school year, like many of our kids did, and then turn it around by the second quarter and do exceptionally well, mathematically, they will still not be able to catch up just because it doesn't work out for them. We want to give them a chance to re-engage and catch up.
So to start off, one of the big things that we hear is, what does it do for the students who strive for A's? This grading scale will not affect anyone striving for an A. In fact, it won't change anything for anybody from D's to A's. If they still strive for A's, they're still going to work for their A's. Nothing is watered down in this system. The expectations are still there, and students still have to perform to earn the grades that they get.
Josh, unmute.
Apologize for that. One of the, in this particular bullet, does this reward lazy students who do not turn in any assignments? One of the things that we want to make known is we want to quit using the term lazy. And I know that we've probably all been guilty of this at one point or another, but this is not our intention. It's not to reward these students. This actually does not reward lazy students. We have many students in our system who have been passing traditionally our classes, but yet when we look at the number of students who have been passing their classes and compared to the number of students that can actually pass the state assessment, it does not correlate. We have more students passing their classes than we do passing the state assessment. So again, this does not reward students whose effort may be less than par.
So again, we want to create equity within our own grading system and our own grading scale. We want to make sure that we're rewarding the students for their time and their effort. We want to make sure that we are trying to create an equalization system. We realize that not everybody learns at the same pace, and so we're trying to create something that's going to allow students to be able to get caught up and to be able to learn at their own rate.
And Amy Paris here, and getting to oversee the college and career readiness initiatives in the district, I'm asked, how does this apply to real world application? And honestly, I hear from employers regularly that they're looking for people who are willing to learn and develop new skills, practice them, improve them with feedback, and in turn makes their whole business or agency better. So they're craving people who have skills in critical thinking and creativity. So to us, this grading system encourages that personal responsibility and ultimately creates transparency. If done right, we're hoping that teachers clearly communicate which assignments, projects that students can kick it in, even if they haven't done well, for a few weeks in the semester, even halfway through, to show that they have mastery of those standards. And then really it's their choice to show initiative or not, and then ultimately their grades will reflect it. So I love it when I'm asked about what's the real world application of this, because it's clearly so much better than kind of the current or the traditional system we've worked in.
Jim, if you're talking, you may need to unmute, man.
All right. So how can I use grades to discipline a student that cheats, misbehaves, or skip? How can I offer extra credit in this system? I'm going to go back to the first slide or second slide I spoke of, the first bullet point. Grades are not a reward or a punishment. Those things happen around conversations. We've had this experience just recently. A student was behaving inappropriately, and the response from the teacher was to contact the parent, line out what the inappropriate behavior was, what the expectation was, and create a partnership between the student, the parent, and the teacher to reinforce the learning. Giving the student a 0 does none of that. It doesn't represent their learning. And how can I offer extra credit in this system? There is no need for extra credit because students are doing the assignments and creating mastery by completing them. There's no reason to do extra credit for bringing in a can of food for a food drive. That's very good citizenship, and it's something that we want to encourage, but it's not a reflection of learning. It's not a reflection of mastery of a standard. Thank you.
Another comment we've heard is that with this new system, students would be able to pass a class by completing a minimum amount of the work. And this highlights the difference between a focus on the learning compared to a focus on completing assignments. If a student does 20% of the work in a class and that work has been designed to show learning, then that student has shown some evidence of learning. It's also very important to keep in mind that passing a class does not mean that a student has mastery of the material. A student getting 60% has some significant holes in their learning. So instead of focusing on the number of assignments we're looking at, it's more important to look at what that completed work shows about student understanding.
So why would we change our practice now and not next year? Well, it's fair and it's equitable for all students, especially now in an online model. Interestingly, I read a great article today. Per the National School Board Association, in an online article published in February this year, it shares how our traditional grading system in the secondary schools could be perpetuating inequities. So according to this research from a large California school district, it'll show that we would value knowledge and not environment or behavior for compliance. It supports hope and a growth mindset, makes grades simpler to understand and are more transparent, and helps to build soft skills without including them in a grade. There was data collected over 2 years supporting the conclusions that the rate of students receiving D's and F's decreased, grade inflation decreased, students' grades improved, and grading was more accurate, and students felt less stress and anxiety. So we have many students right now who are struggling in online learning and the skills necessary for online learning in a traditional grading system. Students are still in the process of understanding the importance of our learning standards, and they're also responsible to learn and apply time management skills, organization, asking questions, networking with other students, emailing teachers, attending Zoom meetings, basically learning what work ethic really looks like and what it means. So yes, we need to change our secondary grading system now because of this sense of urgency in our secondary schools, especially with credit-bearing courses necessary for graduation. Our students really don't come pre-programmed to be successful in schools. They're kids and we're teachers. So it's up to us to teach them and to teach them repeatedly, to work with them, not to penalize them with an unfair grading practice. So until all these important skills and learning standards are learned, that way we give them the best chance at success in life. So if we're serious about doing what's best for kids, we should grade them fairly using equal increments in the same way our awesome teachers are evaluated on a 4-point evaluation system. So we're a few weeks away from the semester where these grades for an online learning model, where many have struggled, will forever be on their transcripts. So the reality too is we're working to do this year's work. In reality, we were working to do this years ago at OHS, around 8 to 10 years ago. And I'm glad that we're finally presenting on this now. So this change is fair, it's equitable. And what is also equally important is that it gives our students that hope. So now I'm going to hand this over to our amazing leader here at McFarland, Jessica Schenk, to also present and open with some grading examples.
Thank you. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. And then the next one after that. Thank you. So this is the first of several examples that we're going to talk about. The first, this is a snapshot of a possible gradebook. You can see the types of assignments, the points possible, the student scores with the traditional and the new grading scales. You can also see that in the new grading scale, what was once a 0 now has half the points possible for a 50%. This student would traditionally have failed this class, even though she got 75% on both quizzes and 60% on the final test. She learned something, even though she did not turn in 4 out of the 12 assignments. Her 61% final grade is more reflective of that learning than failing with a 54%. If she chooses to engage more next semester, she and her teacher have something to build on. Next slide, please.
In this particular example, it's pretty common to many of our teachers and what they're currently experiencing right now, specifically at Desert Oasis High School. What you have is, again, a teacher's grade book, like Jessica mentioned, and the possible points in that first column, and the traditional grading that we've been seeing is specifically during this online learning. We have a lot of 0 grades, but yet when you look at your quizzes or even your tests, the students are learning some. When you look at the proposed model in column number 3, we see those zeros being converted to the 50%, which are 5 points in this case. And you'll notice that the student, when you look at the total score, the student still earned an F. So again, under the traditional, he or she would have been at a 28.33. Under the proposed new model, they'd be at 55, which is still an F. And neither of these columns really shows clear evidence of student learning. Again, this is more of a completion of the task assigned. And again, I kind of echoed the slide that I covered at the very beginning, where we're just trying to give kids a chance to catch up. Catching up from a 28.33 is a much more of a steep hill than coming back from a 55%. So even though we're doing the 55 or the 50% proposed model, the student still has to do something in order to be able to pass. Thank you.
On this next example, we can see a student that had a very poor start for whatever reason. Could have been maybe internet issues, Wi-Fi issues, possibly death in the family, which would create much more issues than just a short-term effect. If you look at the new proposed grading policy in the 3rd column, if you look at the test, they're getting 70% on their test without doing the first 5 or 6 or 7 assignments or so. We believe that this is a much fair grading expectation and policy for this student, and shows more of what their true value really is. If we go to the next slide, please.
And what we did on this next slide is it's the same model that we looked at before, but we added a 4th column, which is the student has decided, they've gone to their teacher and said, hey, those first 7 or 8 assignments that I missed, can I go back and redo those? Can I try and learn the material? And they were able to turn some late work in, as you can see here in this top column there, or the top section outlined in blue. And that student went from a C- in the class to a solid C. it's not going to change. They're not going to jump to an A, but they did decide to engage in the learning, and we want to acknowledge that and reward that. So we just feel that in these models that we've shown, the proposed grading scale is more indicative and more fair as being a representative of what the student has actually done and learned throughout the semester.
As we can see here on the left-hand side, this is our new grade scale, which starts at a 50 and incrementally goes up by 10 points. So F range is 10 points or 10 percentage points. Same with D, C's, B's, and A's. We also are implementing at the high school a late work policy across the board, across the school. In the past, we have had many individual late work policies. We have had late work policies that have been different within departments. And so we wanted to make sure that we had this consistent across the school. And so what we came up with is that starting from November 2nd to December 4th, if students have any type of late work during that period, need to make sure they turn that in by the time we go off to winter break, which is December 18th. If any student has any missing assignments from December 7th to January 15th, last day to turn that in will be January 15th. We also are implementing a retake policy for our quizzes and for our assessments. All quizzes will be given at least one retake chance. This is the minimum. And same thing with all other assessments. We do have departments that are going above and beyond this. For example, the World Language Department is allowing as many retakes as a student would like so that they can get the score that they want. And same thing on assessments. They give them two retakes, or I'm sorry, they give them two chances to take the assessment. If they would like more, they need to conference with that specific teacher. We've asked that our teachers have this scale in effect by this coming Friday, December 11th.
Really quick before we wrap, I just want to, for the middle school, we're implementing this a little bit differently. Since the beginning of this semester, since school even started, we told parents and students that late work will be accepted for the entirety of this semester up until January 15th. That gives teachers time before the end of the semester to get grading done. And then our grading scale won't go into effect until second semester.
Thank you for that clarification. Just wanted to close by thanking the board for listening carefully to all the hard work that's going on across the system. We're really excited about the collaboration again between the three secondary sites as they look to enhance opportunities for all of our students. The last slide there contains a series of resources that we wanted to provide for the community and for the board as well to deepen their understanding of this change in grading practice. So certainly open to any questions for the team from the board this evening.
I've got a couple questions. The first one is how long is this going to be in effect? Is it just during online learning, distance learning? Is it going to go away when we have the kids back to school full time? That's the first question. And then the second question is how has colleges and other institutions of higher education looked at this? Are they going to recognize it, this grading scale? Because I know a lot of their stuff is on grading during, or that it's looked at students' grades.
Yeah, I can address the first portion, and if someone from the high school team or Amy Paris or David Spencer wants to weigh in on perhaps the impact on college in the classroom or those kinds of courses, that would be helpful. But related to the duration or sustainability of the change in practice, I think it's important that the board and the community understand that this work has been, this thinking around this work has been happening for several years, not only in our district, but in many districts across the country. And as Assistant Principal Wood indicated early on in the presentation, the current pandemic and the adjustments to distance learning and the disruption in the system, it brightened the light on these kinds of issues. So it's an opportune time to do it. It makes sense for us to do it now. But our intent is that this would be our practice moving forward. And it's certainly going to take some professional development and learning, not only for our teachers and our staff, other stakeholders in our system, but also for our parents and our students. But this is not a temporary change. This is an adjustment to our grading practices.
I'd love to chime in on the college perspective. Thanks for the question, Ken. We hear often that colleges just want to know, what students know and are they ready? And so the grades on the transcript are one thing, but being able to audit classes, for example, when they go into college, and some schools allow them to take a standards test and say, hey, if you can meet all these standards and show us on this assessment for English 101 or a basic science course for a GUR, then they get to skip that class and go on to the next one. And this policy absolutely would mirror that. And it would teach our kids and our teachers to really sift or water down, I guess, what we're giving kids is just good knowledge, good standards-based education, and creating assessments that will measure that. So they'll be able to jump ahead. It doesn't even matter how old they are, what grade they're in, but show us what you know and what you can master, and we'll let you move forward. So this absolutely lends itself to college and post-secondary thinking.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback onto that, Director Johnson, I'm not sure if Amy, if that was the direction you were going for, what she just presented, or if you were talking more about college in the classroom, our dual credit offerings. Our dual credit offerings at OHS will stay with whatever the college is set up for their grading scale, because those classes are we have an agreement with the universities that we grant credit through, that we will use their policies and procedures. In terms of grading for some of the universities, there are more and more universities. WSU is making the switch in some of the departments when I was there to a 4-point grading scale, which this is a model of what a 4-point grading scale would look like in a traditional 100-point, like we'd be used to seeing when we were kids. Once they look at the transcript, they don't go beyond that. They don't look at, as far as I know, we've never had a university ask us, can you show us your grading policy for social studies? Because we want to know what scale you used. They're just looking at, is it an A, is it a B, is it an A minus, and what does that rank for GPA wise? Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, they were all answered.
I think just one piece I would like to add on there that I think is important to understand about this adjustment is an A is still an A B is still a B. So many of our students who are performing successfully and at a high level, even beyond expectation, there's no adjustment to their experience. What will happen for some of our students who are perhaps on the edge and perhaps considering a 4-year community college experience or technical career, this will, we believe, give them more opportunities to engage with the content. And in fact, they will be better prepared as well for a post-high school experience.
Hey, Pete, if I could just share one personal testimony that just came across for us here at Desert Oasis High School today. We've had at least 5 students who we have not heard from almost at all this entire semester. They engaged today in their advisory class, which is a rarity for them. And some of the things that the kids are saying now is that they think that they now have a chance to pass this semester. So, you know, whether they'll be able to hang on until the end of the semester 1 or not, it's at least given them the hope that we were hoping for with this whole transition. Just wanted to share that.
Any other questions from the board?
So I haven't been able to watch these videos yet. Can you, whoever put the presentation together, can you tell us who this individual is and what makes him that? Yes.
Yeah, the gentleman's name is Doug Reeves, and he is an assessment expert and a grading expert that is a national speaker. And he's been doing this work for about 15 years. He's one of the drivers behind the research behind this modified grading scale and the benefits it has for students. So if you enjoy watching guys with bow ties, you'll like the videos.
Perfect, thank you.
I strongly encourage at least watching the first one.
I just wanted to give a little shout out to Lauren and Elise. We had an opportunity to share some of these concepts with them today, and knowing full well that they're girls who strive for high achievement. And typically this practice will give hope to students who have had other adversities. But those guys had amazing questions, seemed to really understand it, and really showed some empathy for the new system. And I would invite them to make comment if they're comfortable.
Either one of you care to comment?
Yeah, I'll just say I really like the new policy, and I think that it can give our students who are maybe struggling or falling behind some hope, and like that they can do better. And I think that it could really help some of our students.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I'm really excited for this. I know that it'll help my peers, it'll help my friends, you know, and I hope that we can keep this and we can really help our students out.
Awesome, great input. Go ahead, Jen. You're going to say something?
I just wanted to clarify, you're not asking for us to approve this. You're just showing us this information that this is something that you've already put into practice because it's operational. You're not asking for our approval. I just wanted to verify.
Yeah, that is
Clarify.
correct. Yeah, we do know that it is a change in practice. It certainly impacts the work that teachers are doing, the experience that the students are having, and the communications that might go home to families. And we know that when many stakeholders are impacted, that the board tends to hear from those folks. And so we thought it was appropriate to have an opportunity to share with you the thinking behind the decision-making, just to prepare you to field those questions. But it was certainly informational only.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I just want to thank anyone who was involved in this, the entire process. Appreciate your work. I think it will be beneficial to some students. And we look forward to the opportunity to be able to see the improvements with the opportunities afforded to these students. Hopefully they take full advantage of them. I think if this is bought into, which I believe it has, by the administrators who will pass it down to the educators, it'll get to the students, and I think it'll be a combined effort to help us all. So thank you very much for the hard work, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to item D1. We have a monitoring report for EL number 2. Are there any questions on EL number 2? I will entertain a motion to accept the monitoring report for EL number 2.
I move we accept monitoring report for EL2.
There's been a motion made by Director Stevenson to accept monitoring report EL2. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Director Judy. All in favor of accepting the monitoring report for EL2? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item E1. We have GP 7.1, which is our revised calendar that I believe we're just tabling there. Are the others, can you open those, Talia, or are these
Those
just?
We went through last month for their monitoring reports, and they just by default, they come here if there's any changes that we wanted to make.
And I don't believe there was any made on any of the other 3, correct? Okay, are we needing a motion to accept those, Talia? Or those are just informational as well?
They're just informational.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to item F. Do we have any upcoming events? Board, before we go to bed here, let's take the time to do our self-assessment of the meeting and keep up with what we've committed to. I want to thank everyone once again for joining us for the meeting tonight. Appreciate you taking the time to see us interact and conduct business. Thank you once again. Community, this message will continue to go out as long as we have to. Let's continue being safe. Let's continue doing the things that we have to do to try to stop the mitigation of COVID. Let us be mindful that the sooner our numbers are down, the sooner our kids are in front of their teachers, and the sooner we're all in a better place for it. Thank you all very much once again for being here tonight. Our business is concluded and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much and good night.